All right. All right. We are live. Thank you, everybody, once again for tuning in to Street Therapy KC, Street Therapy Kansas City, located here in Kansas City on KUAW Radio, the voice of the community here in Kansas City. I want to start this show out by saying we have a guest that it's the first time we've ever had this guest on the show, and I hope it's not the last. But I think that this show, no, I don't think, I know that this show is going to be very insightful because it's something that is near and dear to my heart. And I know this near and dear to her heart. And once you hear her story, I believe that you'll be able to gravitate toward it and find out that it's not uncommon. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Rebecca Bevans to the show. Hello, how are you?
I am good. I'm good. Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So, Dr. Bevans, you introduce yourself, if you would, to the audience.
Yeah, sure. I'm a professor of psychology. I have a master's degree in human development, specializing in early childhood development. And I have a PhD in cognitive neuroscience.
Yeah.
Pretty much understanding how your body affects your mind, like your physiological state affects your perception. So I teach at a college, Western Nevada College in Nevada, and um, I, yeah, psychology. Psychology is my area, um, and the reason why I'm here is because I inadvertently became an expert in artificial food dyes and how they can affect the body and the mind.
Absolutely. And that's where we're going to start right there. Food dyes. So artificial food dyes, they are, let's see, I'll write this down while we're talking. They're red.
Yeah,
Red is normally red 40, right?
yeah. Red 40, red 3 are the two big
Okay.
ones,
Yep.
and yellow 5 and
Yep.
6,
Yep.
blue 1, green 3. So pretty much anything with a color and a number after it in your
Mm-hmm.
food.
So that's in other countries was I think 13 or so other countries that's actually banned in.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's not banned here in the States? What's the reason behind it?
Uh well, corporations.
Money.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cheap. You
Yeah.
can use inferior ingredients, color them, make them look fresher, brighter, more appealing. I
Right.
think over the years, so colors kind of hit the scene in the 70s and 80s. Since 1980, the use of artificial food dyes in foods have increased by 500%. I
Mm-hmm.
think the American public has gotten used to bright and shiny food,
Mm-hmm.
and so companies use it to catch your attention and to hopefully get you to buy their products.
Absolutely. So those yeah, bright and shiny things and other things that are bright and shiny. Americans just want what they want. It's a supply and demand thing.
Mhm.
So the significance of the food dye has touched you and your family in a specific way. Could you please tell us how so?
Yeah. So I have a son. He is 17 now. And when he was a kid, he was really hyperactive and couldn't sit still. And we just thought that that's the way he was. He's a sharp kid. So they didn't think that there was any disorders happening necessarily um, at first, but he couldn't sit still. So he got to a point where when he was in school, and I will summarize this as small as I can. He got to a point when he was in school, and I think he was like third grade,
Mm-hmm.
and he just couldn't concentrate on his homework. And I asked him, just like, come on, bud, just focus. And he said,
Right.
I can't focus. My brain's buzzing.
Mm-hmm.
So having a degree in neuroscience, I know that brains are not supposed to buzz, right? That's a
Right.
real simple, like,
Right.
neuroscience 101, brains don't buzz.
Yeah.
So I thought it was odd, and I started to do a bunch of research and came across a girl who had a blog, and I wish I could find her now.
Mm.
And she posted about how her brain buzzed when she ate red 40. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is a source of some of his behaviors. I mean, at that time, he definitely exhibited those ADHD type behaviors.
Right.
So hyperactivity and attentiveness, blurting out in school, couldn't sit still, thrashed around at night in his sleep.
Mm.
And so I thought, okay, fine, we'll pull the red 40 and see how he does. And we did it over winter break in his 3rd grade year. And he did really well. So like the brain buzzing stopped. He was able to focus a little bit more. And his favorite candy was red. And so he always ate the red stuff, and then couldn't eat the red stuff now. So he shifted to like the yellow stuff.
Right.
And so started eating other colors. And in hindsight, I don't know why I thought the rest of the colors were going to be safe for him. But so he started eating more yellow. And by the summer, we went on vacation with Grandpa and Granny, and we went to Hawaii, and he was eating shaved ice with that colored yellow syrup every single day. And before that, he was having the meltdowns like once a month, and then it became like closer to once a week. And these meltdowns were, like, hey, can you just put your clothes away real quick, and then we'll go watch some TV. And he would have a fit. Kids have meltdowns, right? But these were like beyond what he should be having over the subject. Like, turn off the TV and come to dinner, and he's screaming and raging and grabbing and shredding at his clothes and trying to swing on me. I mean, like, this is a little over exaggerated. And so by the time we got back from Hawaii, and he's eating these dyes all the time, he was having 5 to 10 meltdowns a day. And then he started, and I can never say this without getting choked up. He started getting so upset and then begging to die. He would ask me to get him a knife so he could kill himself because he didn't want to live
at
anymore.
7 years old.
At 7. Yeah. And I just, at that point, it was, oh my, we have to do something, because if he keeps going like this, we're going to lose him by the time he's a teenager. He will kill himself. And I know enough too about, it's very uncommon for children under puberty, before puberty, to be suicidal. And it was just, something wasn't right. So after one of these horrible meltdowns, and him just begging to die, I was like, that's it. So we pulled all the dyes out of his diet, and he crashed. He crashed like a meth addict,
like a drug addict. like a drug,
a drug addict coming off of drugs. He was sore to touch. He was tired. He'd get up and he'd go lay down on the couch, and he couldn't even go play with his friends for more than 5 minutes outside. He just couldn't, he couldn't move. And it took him 3 months to recover, but after less than a week, he wasn't having meltdowns anymore. After 3 days, the meltdowns were gone, and he's never been suicidal since.
And that's off having them off of the red.
Off of the yellow, off of everything. Okay. So the red was like the ADHD stuff. The yellow was like the emotional upheaval and the oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, like these aggressive rages and being deceitful and hiding and just all the things that just weren't normal for him. And that was the yellow. And so, we pulled him off all the dyes and kept him off all the dyes, and he was fine. And over the years, so it's like 6 months later, I mentioned in my TED Talk, we were at the Thai restaurant, and he wanted green tea ice cream that had green 3 in it. And he tried to convince me that green doesn't cause a problem. And by the time we were home, now this is a kid who's been drinking coffee since he was 2. I know. Controversial, but he's like 6'2", so it didn't stunt his growth, and it didn't cause any problems. He's always loved coffee, but it's never made him like extremely hyper or anything. To this day, he can drink coffee and he's not hyper. So he had the green tea ice cream. By the time we were home, this kid's
Yeah.
manic, off the walls, like, Mom, come on, let's play ball. Let's
Yeah.
catch, Mom, catch. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is 8 o'clock at night, and the kid's wired for sound. And the next morning he was crashed out, recovering. And I asked him, are you going to eat green tea ice cream anymore? And he's like, no. He felt so bad. So over the years, we've had these accidental dosings, is what I call them. And it affects him. It affects him terribly. And yes, he's very sensitive. He can't have no dyes at all. No toothpaste with color, no mouthwash, no lotion, no shampoo, no soap, nothing that touches him or inside of him at all, period, any amount. And so, yeah, he's a little extreme, and not everybody is that extreme. But there's a lot of variation in there, and there's a lot of people who could be, a lot of these kids who could be having dye reactions, and we don't even know it.
Mr. Walker, can you delete your video real quick? Yeah, we can. Oh, you can't see him?
I can see him. I can see him.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I mean, you're welcome to join in, but
right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
it seems like the different colors have different effects. If that's about right.
Yeah. So for our son, the red causes kind of like the ADHD behaviors, the hyperactivity, the inability to pay attention. The yellow is the one that is for us the worst, because it really causes that anger and there we go. So it causes like the anger and aggression. He said he described it once as like that little voice in the back of your head that tells you to do things that you can just dismiss now becomes front and center, and you can't ignore it anymore. And it's that he just gets really angry and really feral. It's interesting. I had a parent explain to me that the look they get in their eye is feral, and it's a great description, because they get this look in their eye where they're just really aggressive and not happy and angry, and everything irritates him. He says that he knows he's eaten something with dyes when everything in the world is irritating him. And so he does act differently. Green seems to cause the mania, where blue kind of makes him tired and grumpy. He still says that blue doesn't cause a problem, but he avoids it. Now, I've talked to other parents who've had the same type of reaction with their kids, and I've talked to parents who blue was really bad for their child, and green, and so I think it also depends on the child. But generally, there are these different dyes seem to cause different reactions. And you only know this when you eliminate them, because you get a bowl of cereal, a handful of Skittles, and you've got all the colors. A handful of, or a bowl of Fruit Loops, you get all the colors. And so we were in a really unique situation where we had no colors at all, and we got to introduce them one at a time. So we would test them out over the summer, just to see what would happen. I always pick the summer because it takes a while for it to get out of your system.
That was my next question.
So for him, like, red lasts for 2 or 3 days, yellow lasts for 5 days, and blue and green are out pretty quick. And we had a researcher explain to us that that's because red and yellow are azo dyes. We don't know enough how dyes affect the system, because there's no money for research. The FDA is not doing research. The government's not funding research. We really need to better understand what they're doing to our bodies. So there's speculation that they're endocrine disruptors. So they interrupt the endocrine system. There's speculation that they break down into what's called metabolites, and those metabolites have an effect on the brain. We don't know. So blue and green, those will come out of your system the way they went in. You give enough blue to a little white rat, and his little feet and nose turn blue. And so they don't break down. Green doesn't break down, but the red and the yellow do, and that's why we think that they last longer in the system. So the reason that's important is because if you're eating Cheetos on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, by Thursday night, you're going to have 4 doses basically in your system. And so it builds up. And that buildup is really what had an effect on our son when he's eating all these yellow things in Hawaii. And by the time we got home, he was just so over the top. He was dosed so high. It's like he was high.
It's like an accidental overdose.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
And the irony of the fact, and I know you talked some about a lot of the different things that have the different colors in, like sunscreen has it, a lot of the different things, deodorant has it, and a lot, and I've used certain deodorants. I've eliminated the ones with aluminum. But I'm like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't have aluminum, but it's a different color. So, I mean, I don't know if it affects me, and I've never tried to see if it affects me or not. And it might. Who knows?
It might. And I don't understand that. I don't understand why men's deodorant has to be blue. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure every man I've talked to was like, I don't care the color of my deodorant. So it's not because you guys are demanding blue deodorant. But if you think about it, there's a lot of lymph nodes that go into your system in your armpits. And so you're putting a lot of dye, because that blue is blue, on your armpits and putting it directly into your system. Our skin is the largest organ of our body. It absorbs what we put on it. And there's research showing that what you put on your skin, sunblock, the active ingredient in sunblock ends up in your blood within 24 hours. So it is getting absorbed, and it's in stuff. So I've had people say to me, oh, well, my kid doesn't eat candy, they don't get dyes. I'm like, oh, time out. So your toothpaste, because that goes underneath sublingual, is a great way of getting things into your system.
That's right.
Your shampoo and conditioner, soap, pickles.
And you can't say that's not true, because people who chew tobacco put it right there and go straight into their system.
Right. I mean, there's actual medications that you take underneath your tongue. So So pickles, they put yellow dye in there. Now, I will say 10 years ago, it was very, very hard to find a pickle without yellow food dye. Now it is a lot easier. Some companies are listening and they're catching on. So Kroger brand, which is sold in a bunch of different stores, they have, I was at the store a couple of months ago, and I used to have to go to 3 different stores. If I wanted pickle relish, I would have to go to one store without dyes. If I wanted sweet pickles, I'd have to go to a different store. So I'm standing there and I'm looking, and right on the front of the container, it says no synthetic dyes. And they had every flavor of pickle relish, everything you can imagine right there in front of me. It was like, I just about cried, which sounds really ridiculous to be crying over pickles.
You made the heaven, huh?
Yeah. And they were cheap. They weren't even expensive. And that was like the good part, because sometimes we would have to just buy organic stuff, which can be more expensive. And so pickles, pepperoncini peppers, some jalapenos. We found red in pasta sauce. Now, that was only one brand. Most don't have it, but they might. Green salsa sometimes has it. Trying to think of marshmallows have blue one in them to make them whiter. So you have to look careful, because some brands don't, and most of the brands do. So there's that. So people will tell me, well, I don't, my kids don't eat candy. Like, well, yeah, but that doesn't mean they're not eating dyes. And some kids can handle little bits. Other kids can't handle any. My son can handle 0, zilch.
So as a parent, what should we look for somebody that's listening that say, you know what, I don't really understand. I think maybe it's just too much sugar. We'll just cut out all the sugar. Maybe it's just too much bread, or the yeast, or the, now gluten. People are kind of
Mhm.
like gluten, and then it's
Yeah.
the peanut allergies, and then there's just so many different things. It almost, to be honest with you, it almost seems like our bodies are breaking down.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. You hear people talk about global warming and all this other stuff. I mean, it just seems that, or is it the fact that we're actually, the research is getting better at diagnosing these things. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting better. So we're just kind of noticing them now as opposed to then.
I think it's a combination of stuff. So, like, for example, celiac, gluten intolerance has always been
Mhm.
around.
Mm,
The original researcher that found it in Italy came to
mm.
America and said, "How many people do you have that have this gluten intolerance?" And the American doctor said, "None." And it
None.
wasn't done. It was nobody looked, right? So we have a 500% increase in the use of artificial colors than we did in the 80s. We have seen a massive increase in behavioral problems in children since the 80s.
Yeah.
So, are they correlated?
Mm,
Yeah, they're correlated, but does that mean that one causes the other? We don't know. But
yeah.
so, for anyone who's listening,
Yeah.
if you don't have behavior problems, you have no anxiety, no depression, your kids are fine, everybody's fine, then you can eat the dyes. Now, I will say they're probably not good for you. They're
Hmm.
petroleum based, they're chemicals. We don't need them. But
Mm,
if they don't bother you, you don't need
yeah.
to worry about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
However, if your kid's acting up and has attention problems or behavior problems or anger issues,
Yeah.
and they're having meltdowns that are beyond the typical kid meltdown,
Yeah. There's something behind it.
yeah, there's something behind it.
Yeah.
Now, also remember, half of these kids grow. They they think, doctors and researchers that I've talked to, the best in the world,
Mm,
think that about half the kids grow out of it. Okay, cool. Half don't.
yeah.
My kiddo didn't.
Yeah.
We were praying that he was going to
Yeah.
grow out of this. He
Yeah.
did not. He is 6'2", 240 pounds,
Yeah.
and he's just as reactive now as he was when he was 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of adults walking around with migraines, tinnitus, anxiety, depression,
Mm.
obsessive
Adult
thoughts.
ADHD type symptoms.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so, and the brain
Yeah.
buzzing, right? Which
Yeah.
sounds like tinnitus to some people, but there's like this, yeah, this buzzing in your head, like listening to the
Mm.
fluorescent lights
Yep.
when there's no fluorescent lights, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've had a lot of adults tell me, "Oh my gosh, I pulled dyes out of my diet and my migraines went away. My
Mm.
tinnitus went away. And then I went
Mm.
to a party and had a cupcake and I got it back." So when you've got behavior problems, when you have physical issues like that,
Mm.
that's when you kind of have to look at what you're eating
Right.
and question what's going on here. We eat
Right.
far more processed food now than we have ever.
Yeah.
And the cheapest stuff has the most dyes because they need to make it look attractive, otherwise
Yeah.
people won't buy it.
Right.
And they don't use great ingredients.
Right.
So,
And oftentimes it lasts longer on the shelf.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it's full of other preservatives.
Yeah.
Another, total side story, but my son's reactive to TBHQ, which is a
Mm.
preservative.
Okay.
The colors that he's reactive to are these petroleum based dyes. They're made, it's a petroleum byproduct, right? Which
Right.
oil and not healthy. I mean, the first dyes came out of tar production, coal tar
Mm.
production.
Wow.
So they're not
Huh.
great for you. But if you are having these problems, or if your kiddo's having these problems, removing the dyes from their diet for 2 weeks,
Mm.
you'll actually, most people see a change in 1 week. I say 2. So 2 weeks, and you'll
Yeah.
know if it's the dyes or not. If it's
Mm.
not the dyes, then go back to eating whatever you want and then go look at the next thing. But people get put on medications, or they jump to medications
Yeah.
because they think that's the problem. Well, 80-90% of ADHD medications have artificial synthetic dyes in them.
Yeah.
So you have a dye problem, but I'm going to give you a pill with the dye in it,
Yeah.
and now we don't have a resolution. You have anxiety, but I'm going to give you a medication that has color in it, and now your anxiety isn't going away, or your depression's not going away. And And so we're going to give you 3 more pills with 3 more different colors in there. And so
Yeah.
taking a step back and saying, hey, let's just try removing the dyes. I really wish that my own child was the only one on this planet that is reacting to artificial food dyes, because I wouldn't need to have said anything. I wouldn't need to have done my TED talk. I would just deal. But I have talked to thousands and thousands of parents. I'm in groups across different social media platforms, 10, 40,000 parents in a group, and it's growing rapidly. Yep. Because some people just want to remove the toxic stuff. Other people, it's because we have to. Yeah. And there's so many. I had a parent, Carly, message me. And after her message, I cried for 3 days. I'm like, I'm not kidding you. I cried for 3 days. Her daughter was 4. Yeah. They were getting ready to put her on antipsychotics because she was so over the top in her moods. And a 4-year-old, a little 4-year-old, 4. Yeah. And
barely out of toddler.
Yeah. And so she sent me this message, like, I just want you to know you saved my daughter's life. And I just we're good friends to this day. And she sent me a picture of her daughter, and she's like got long sleeves and gardening boots, and she goes, what you don't understand is she couldn't stand anything touching her skin before.
Yep.
And she would walk around the house. So instead of saying she wanted to kill herself, she'd walk around the house and talk about who she was going to kill in the family. And then she would have horrible meltdowns. They went to Disneyland, and it was one of the worst experiences because of her over the top emotional behaviors. And as soon as she pulled dyes out of her diet, the kid turned into who she is, this wonderful, beautiful human that is so kind and loving. And she held the whole family hostage. Yep. And so here, 4-year-old, how many kids are being put on medications that just don't need it? So I've had people say, well, I eat dyes and it doesn't cause a problem. And fantastic. We wish we were you. We wish everyone was like you, but it's not the case. And there are a bunch of kids that are suffering. And the populations that are hit the most are the people that are the closest to the poverty line, because they consume more foods with artificial colors than other populations. And then we dismiss these kids. Oh, well, they're just acting up because they have a rough childhood, or or it must be stress or a learning disability or what have you. And it's not
bad home structures, or dad not being there or whatever.
Oh, people call me a bad parent. That my son was acting up because I was a bad parent. Mind you, I tried behavioral modification for 4 years and it didn't work. And then I look back and go, what did I do to my kid? For years, we tried every psychological tactic there is in order to get him to behave. And it wasn't that. And so, if people, I have a degree in people. I have 3 degrees in people. I'm the bad parent. How easy do we dismiss people who are hardworking people who are under a heck of a lot of stress? And we just go, well, they're just bad parents. No.
Yeah. Those people over there.
Yeah, those people, right? Yeah.
So and it's funny you talked about just the whole medicine. Even kind of going back to the medication. Say the kids are having an issue. Okay, they're eating this. Okay, you're noticing certain things, so you say, well, you know what? We'll give you medicine because allergies or sick or whatever the case. Okay, so you give them allergies, Benadryl or whatever the case. So you give them medicine. You say, well, okay, you take it 2 or 3 times a day. Well, that's 2 or 3 doses within that day that you're not even paying attention to because you think it's helping. So it helps in one instant, but the long shot, it actually hurts.
You're right. There was a study done by Dr. Arnold who looked at, I'm pretty sure I'm quoting the correct author, looked at how much dye is in foods, because there is an allowable limit, but they don't tell you how much is in the food.
Right.
And they don't tell you really how much the allowable limit is. So how are you supposed to understand what is allowable and what isn't?
Yeah.
So she went and looked at, so like cough medicine, that red or purple, the cherry or the grape cough medicine.
Yeah.
If you give that to a child, let's say you have a sick kid, you give them the cough medicine, let's say it's 3 doses in a day, you give them 3 doses, they're over the allowable daily limit.
Yeah.
What if they have a bowl of colored cereal, an orange soda, and some colored snacks? Now we're over the limit.
Yeah.
Fruit snacks, we think the word fruit there. Fruit snacks have dye in them. Although Mott's and a couple other brands, I was at the store. My kid loves fruit snacks, so we have to get him the organic ones. No,
Yeah.
Mott's right on the front. No artificial colors.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hallelujah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
companies are getting it. Baskin Robbins pulled it out of their ice cream, but didn't tell anyone, because the American public has a problem. When Trix pulled it out of their cereal, people wrote them screaming, "You ruined my childhood. It tastes different." No, it doesn't taste any different. Dyes don't affect taste. Nothing affects taste. Oh, you're ruining. And they put the dye back in because the general public had a fit. Even Kraft mac and cheese, they were sneaky. They pulled the dye out and for 6 months didn't tell anyone. They used a natural colorant and then came out with a commercial. Hey, you all like mac and cheese. Guess what? 6 months ago, we pulled the dye out. Ha! But and their sales didn't drop, so they knew that no one knew.
Yeah.
And then they told everyone that there's no artificial colors in it anymore.
Yeah.
And tricked them into, well, you ate it before, so don't tell me now it bothers you.
You don't want to, yeah, right.
So yeah, the American public isn't allowing this to happen because they're so used to the colors of certain foods that have been artificially colored for a really long time.
You like what you like.
Yeah, but if it's causing a problem, we got to take a step back. How much gun violence is there because people are high on artificial colors?
Yeah, well, oftentimes as you hear in some of the when they interview some of the shooters, they say, "Well, a voice told me to."
Yeah.
Something in my head, something triggered me at that moment, and I went and shot the whole house.
Yeah.
And it's funny that mental health is kind of the buzzword now. And I pray that we continue to stay there and actually get the help, as opposed to this being a fad,
Yes.
And kind of getting over next to the next one. But it seems that it's a mental health, but it's also something that actually works with that. It's not just giving people was it Ritalin or whatever the case to just dumb them down and get them off drugs. Well, there's actually something that triggers that.
Yeah, we interviewed for a documentary that's going to be coming out called I think it's called To Die For, the documentary. And my son said in there, that little voice in your head that tells you to do something that we can easily dismiss becomes so loud that he can't, it's difficult to ignore. And it's and that we all have a voice. We all have that inner, well, the majority of people have that inner voice. And that inner voice, it's not because we're schizophrenic or we have some other personality or whatever. It's that healthy inner voice that we have, but
it's a conscience.
It's our conscience, but it becomes really it's like that little devil and the little angel on the shoulder, right?
Right.
But the little devil voice takes over and tells us to do things. I mean, they eat the chocolate cake, right? You want the chocolate cake. I'm on a diet, but you want the chocolate cake. That little struggle in our head that we go through.
Don't stop. You're on another piece. You're on another piece.
Yeah, but that little devil now, that voice is really, really loud, and that little angel voice is hogtied and duct taped in the closet, and there's and so this voice told me to do it. And so even if 10% of all this violence that we see in our society is fueled by dyes, well, hey, that's 10% less then. 10% less. And it does cause a mental health problem. It does cause people to not feel good, that racing anxiety or that depression that nobody needs to live with. And our society is overwhelming. And And yes, maybe not removing dyes gets rid of all of it, but if it lessens it a little bit. And yes, there is ADHD is an absolute disorder,
Yeah.
and those individuals definitely benefit from medication.
Right.
But there's a lot of kids that are misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And so how difficult is it to just stay away from dyes for a week or two? Just a little experiment, just to, you know, it just to check it out and see
Yeah.
if you feel better.
You know, you said something a little bit ago in the interview. You talked about that look in their eyes,
Yeah.
and it's funny. As soon as we talked about the shooting and things like that, it seems like when the shooting happens, whether they hear the voice or whatever case, but if you've noticed during most court cases, when they go back and they show the young kids, normally a young kid, there's always a funny stare, like in their eyes. There's like a gaze in their eyes. It's almost like, now I don't know what that look is that you talked about earlier, but
Where does it come from?
yeah,
Why is it there? I'm looking into my son's eyes when he is on color. That is one of the indicators for me
yeah,
that something's not right.
yeah,
He ate an eclair not too long ago, and it didn't occur to me to, I've been doing this 10 years and I still screw up, that pastry cream is yellow.
yeah,
We assume it's egg. No, it's actually
no,
colored.
yeah,
So he just ate an eclair. That's it, one eclair. And he's arguing with me over the stupidest stuff, which is like indicator number one. But he's got that look in his eye.
right,
And it's like this half blank, half rage, half just, but it's not the normal look that he has.
absolutely.
And that's the second indicator of, whoa, something's not right. And so yes, one parent called it feral, because in little children, it's this wild-eyed look. There's a meme going around of this little girl with a big huge thing of cotton candy in blue, and she's got this like wild-eyed look, and that is a mixture of like sugar and color. Sugar is one thing, but he's got this look, and yeah, how many have it? And I mean, I wish there was a way to find out just how many people who commit crimes are reacting to color.
And seeing when you and then when you do, and kind of side note, when you go back and you look at like a lot of the like a lot of serial killers, and if you read a lot of their bios and things like that, it kind of off base here, a lot of their history dealt with them delving into pornography.
Yeah.
And then they viewed women as objects, and then it just went on, and then it just this snowball effect that they couldn't get a grip of because they could not satisfy that, you know. And then I guess, you know, fast forward to, you know, the dyes and things like that. I know it's kind of a weird comparison, but you know, it's still that, was it the dopamine hit, you know, and things like that, those pleasure zones that trigger in their body, in their mind.
Yeah, they get high off of it. They get so a lot of like, so people, the serial killers have like low levels of what we call brain arousal. And so it takes a lot to get that dopamine and adrenaline going. And so they need some extreme behaviors in order to get that adrenaline going. And so, yeah, then we look at the kids who are on dyes who have this, they're high, their adrenaline's going, their body's going, their brain is going, they're jacked up. And so, yeah, it's like one thing can set off a cascade of behaviors that people kind of share, and we don't know why that they're doing this. And there needs to be more questions, and there needs to be more research, and there needs to be more discussion about how this is actually affecting people, and who it's affecting, and how is it affecting mental health, and what is the bigger picture on this? How is it making some disorders worse? Like, there was research in the past, like 35 years ago, that definitely pointed to children with ADHD are more sensitive to food dyes. Okay, well, getting rid of the food dyes doesn't mean that the ADHD goes away, but it maybe becomes more manageable. Maybe your migraines don't go away, but they become more manageable, so that one little piece of removing it maybe doesn't answer all of the questions. I'm definitely not saying that removing dyes is going to turn this society into a peaceful, loving,
Solve the world's problems.
hippie culture. Yeah, it is definitely not going to solve the world's problems. I wish,
Right,
but
right,
it's not. But it will solve some problems for that family. Like
right.
I don't want another child to go through what my son went through. I don't want
Absolutely.
another parent to go through what we went through.
Yeah.
It that it, I don't I don't want anyone to know what that's like. When people go,
Sure.
I can't imagine. I don't want you to, because
Right.
it's horrifying, and
Yeah.
it is just, it's devastating for the kids, it's
Yeah.
devastating for the families, and then to grow up into being adults, it's difficult for the adults. My kid knows he's got to be careful
Yeah.
what he eats and drinks, because something can set him off into a
Yeah.
rage and he could hurt himself or someone else.
Yeah. I've got a friend that's a psychologist, is a therapist, and we talked about some time ago about those emotional triggers. Those things that if something happens, say something pop like that, and if you have PTSD, or if you have something like that, as soon as you hear that, you instantly
Right.
freak out, and I would assume that would be like a person that has a dye problem, a kid that has a dye. As soon as they taste it, uh-oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bam. Oh no. Like
yeah,
my son, if it's too colored,
yeah,
even if it's natural, he's like,
yeah.
I don't know if I want to try that. I
Because you
got
don't want to go
protein
back.
bars. Yeah, I got protein bars the other day, and they're yellow because they're
Yeah,
lemon, and
yeah,
it's got a natto, and he doesn't react to a natto. I know some people do. It's a seed. Some people react to it, but he doesn't.
mm,
And he goes, yeah, but it's yellow, and like he's like so afraid of eating
yeah,
things. I came home with naturally dyed cookies once. I was so excited, and he goes, I'm not eating those because they're too
yeah,
brightly colored. And yeah, so it's that PTSD for the longest time of, that's got color in it, I don't want to touch it. And
yeah.
Cheetos has a line of Simply, right? They're all natural, there's no artificial colors in there. He'll
Nice.
eat those. We come home with another brand of chip or something that's yellow, even though it's natural.
Yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah,
you're right, they get this emotional reaction
yeah.
that I know how that's going to make me feel, or how that could
Absolutely,
make me feel. I know what it
absolutely.
feels like to eat that, and I don't want to do that.
And they're not only for themselves, but they're protecting you as well,
Yep.
as a mom, and your husband. It's like, I know how it's going to affect me, and I know, and I don't need, are are they in their right mind, or I mean, do they understand totally, or are they totally out of it, or is there some type of thing? Well, you know what, I know what's going on, but I can't stop this feeling.
All of it.
Yeah,
So when it's red, he
yeah,
didn't realize. So he got dosed with something red the other day, and we still haven't been able to figure out what it is. But his
mm,
friend, he was on the phone with his friend, and she was like, wow, you are all over the place. This is not normal for you.
yeah,
What's up? And then the yellow, he didn't recognize it either. But as soon as I said, okay, I did the research, pastry cream has yellow, you ingested yellow, he went in his room and he tried to, like, okay, this is I'm high. This is just a reaction. This isn't real. This isn't real.
yeah,
And kind of pulled
mm,
himself down a little bit, and then realizes he's got another 2-3 days
mm,
of this. And yeah, it sets the family off for two,
yeah,
3 days. It affects the family. And
yeah,
so at the time, green, if he gets accidental green, he knows, because he's so manic and wired,
yeah,
mania can feel great, but it's
yeah.
not healthy and not normal, and he can pick up on that. It's also easier to avoid things with green and red. Yellow is, again, the harder one to avoid.
Yeah,
But at first he may not recognize it, and then he does, and then he can
yeah,
recognize that he's high. We call it being high, being dosed,
yeah,
and needs to kind of focus to calm down. But again, he's been doing this for 10 years.
yeah,
What
yeah,
about the kids that just don't know, and
yeah,
they're crying and sobbing, and they don't, it's not that my son wanted to die. He
Right.
didn't want to live like that anymore. He didn't want to
Yeah.
feel like that
You
anymore.
want the buzzing to stop.
Yeah, he wanted the
Yeah.
emotional upheaval to
Yeah.
stop. He wanted
Yeah.
all of it to just stop. And so how many of these kiddos out there are the, especially the littles, or how many of our adults
Yeah.
are so overwhelmed and they just want it to stop, and the overwhelm is because of something they're eating.
You know, and having this conversation, I man, I can't help but to think about the single mom. You know,
Yeah,
the single mom that's home and may have a babysitter at home, or may have a kid that's old enough to take care of themselves, that may be able to sit with the little brother or sister, and her budget is
yeah,
what her budget is, and her resource is the local grocery store that in the inner city. I'm from the inner
yeah,
city. Um, there are food deserts. There's not a Whole Foods within how long.
right,
There's
right,
there's not like an organic fresh grow. This it's the grocery store, whatever that you. And then okay, so you have that, but then you have your resources and your finances, what you're limited to, and then it's like, you know what? I'm just trying to put food on the table.
yeah.
I, you
I'm
know,
trying to keep my kids
and I
alive.
absolutely, and I don't totally understand why. I come home and then everybody's hanging from the rafters, or this, and then they go to
Yeah,
school, and then and then you want to get a belt and whoop them, but you want to put them in the corner. But then you take them to school, they put them in ISS or OSS or INSU, and
mhm.
then okay, it's like enough. How do I start? So yeah,
And then they're eating, the kids are eating at school,
yeah,
and those have dyes in them. The breakfast that they give them, the lunches that they give them. I've gone rounds and rounds with our district
mm,
about, you got to get the dyes out. This is
yeah,
for all of those people, and especially for those single moms. This is why.
yeah,
This is why I advocate so hard. I just testified to the California Department of Public Health. I am on documentaries. I do this outreach and education all the time. I am working with the Center for the Science and the Public Interest, who's working really hard to get dyes removed from our food supply. This is why those people, those mamas that are working their butts off and trying super hard, they're the reason why I am fighting so hard for this, because they can only control so much at home, but what about out in the rest of the world, when the kids are getting foods outside of the house? And yeah, you don't, at the bodega you have what, one brand of snacks for kids. You don't
right,
have five to choose from, and you don't have these choices. And that's why I'm saying these families that are on under the poverty line are the ones that are hit the most, because
mhm,
money is scarce, and
yeah,
the cheaper stuff has more stuff in it, and it breaks my heart.
mhm,
And so until we can get this
yeah,
completely out of our system, those mamas are going to be the ones that are fighting the hardest. And it
yeah,
doesn't mean don't try
right,
it. If you've got a kid that's just going berserk,
yeah,
trying to do something, and then we dismiss those kids. Oh, they're from a single parent. Oh, she's not
mhm,
doing a good job, when that mom is probably the best mama there is.
mhm,
And so it's this double whammy. Society's telling her she's not doing the right thing, while society's feeding her kids the things that could very
mhm.
well be the problem.
Well,
So
and you said that, right, our son is 7 years old, and we had him test and stuff like that, and they said he might have, a touch of ADHD, and I was like, no, 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 no. So, but you know, but so we're at school, and he's working on his problems and stuff, and his teacher's like, well, he's not getting it and stuff. We're like, well, what do you mean? So then she's like, well, what are you guys doing at home? We're like, what? So
yeah,
and then
yeah,
so and then she's sending these notes home, said you need to work with them more at home. We're like, what? It's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. We're doing what we can do, and you're saying that we're not doing this. So no, 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 no.
yeah,
And then it becomes this match between the teachers and the parents, and then the kids stuck in between, like,
right,
hello,
right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yes, everyone wants to point the finger, and parents get pointed at like you're not doing your job, and you are doing your job, and you're working with the kiddo. And
yeah,
and yeah,
And we're like,
And
wait a minute. We're like, you have them 8 hours a day.
right, right,
We have them for dinner and bath.
right,
What are you talking
exactly.
about?
Yeah. And then that's a discussion of how the teachers are overworked and underfunded in the
Oh
schools.
yeah.
But yeah, and look at the snacks that they give kids at school. They're not healthy. Most of the teachers that I talk to are the ones that are like, oh heck yeah, artificial colors cause problems. We can see it. We give stuff snacks to kids, we can watch them. And yes, people have come at me. It's the sugar. All right, well, my kid can eat sugar all day long. He doesn't go psychotic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, sugar's a problem. And that's a whole nother conversation as well
Sure.
about how
Yeah.
what sugar does to your brain and but it's not causing
Yeah.
the behaviors that we see in some kids
Yeah.
that the artificial colors cause. And yeah, you're getting it left and right.
Yeah.
And it's the problem isn't getting resolved. And
Yeah.
we need to start. Okay, there's no one answer. Anytime anyone says, oh well, this one thing and will
Yeah.
fix society, okay, no, they're lying.
Yeah.
Or they're really disillusioned. There's so many little pieces in our society that make who we are and what's going on. And I'm just advocating for let's remove one piece.
Yeah.
It's not needed. Other countries do just fine. Do you know you can go to Canada and buy a box of Fruit Loops and there's no artificial colors in it? But not here.
No.
So Fruit Loops are made without colors. They can make them here without colors.
Right.
And you can tell the people this is what you get, and people will still buy Fruit Loops. If we removed the colors, then people they would adjust. They would deal. We would all get over our need for bright and shiny food.
Yeah.
And so yeah, all of Europe does a fine job.
Yeah.
And other countries. And so we're behind on this. And is it because these companies, we don't want companies to lose money because they're going to have to change their formulations? Oh, I'm sorry. That breaks my heart. But let's think of our people here first.
Profit over people.
Yeah, where Europe is more tend towards more socialist capitalism, and they put people over profits, people over corporations.
So I listened to a few of your interviews, and you said something about $5 million as far as would that be going to research?
Yeah. So there was a study done. The study that was done in Europe by Dr. Stevenson, who demonstrated that dyes affect children, and a couple of years later, Europe banned them in their country.
Right.
To redo that study now would probably cost about $5 million or so.
Yeah.
We could redo that study with using so he used dyes that were approved in the UK, and some of those at the time were not approved in the United States. So if we did a study here, I know the people who would do it. We can just follow his research because it was very sound.
Yeah.
And so we can replicate his research here in this country. It would probably cost about $5 million to do so. And we would have more research backing the effects that dyes have and the percentages. His percentages, they were far higher than they expected.
Yeah.
And so we could do that here.
Yeah.
It's just who's going to cough up the 5 million. People really want to change the world in this country, and there's people that have a lot of money. $5 million, we can put it to a great use, and we can do some research. The FDA doesn't do a lot of research. They do very minimal. They did some rat research looking for permanent neurological damages in rats. It doesn't cause permanent damages, thank God. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about behavioral changes.
Yeah.
But they don't do the research, and then they leave it up to the large corporations to police themselves. But the large corporations aren't policing themselves. Some are, some are not.
Yeah.
And so because of that, now we need funded research run through a university with qualified researchers who know what they're talking about, know what they're doing, and we have a model for the research. Everything's set up, and we can do it and get it done relatively quickly, and then we would have more answers.
Yeah.
Because right now, this California, the California Department of Public Health. Well, the argument is, well, there's not enough research. Okay, fair enough. But then give us money for research. Oh, but there's no money for research, but there's not enough research. So what you're saying is you don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Yep, that's it.
Because if you wanted to know, we would have the money for the research and we can end this discussion now.
Right.
But we can't end the discussion because we don't have the research. It's such a circular, like
if we give you the money to find out the research, that the research might be conclusive of what you're talking about. Right. But if we give you money, then now we're held accountable for what the research says.
And now we have to change. And now we have to tell companies that they have to change. And you know how people love change, right? So people don't love change.
Yeah.
If you don't know, people hate change. And so they don't want to know. And so now it comes down to like the private people and private industry that is going to have to fund this. And we've got a bunch of people just waiting. So I just have to come across someone who has a spare $5 million and
and say, hey, give it to my fund, GoFundMe.
We've got a nonprofit ready to go to help fund this research. And so
since you talked about that, while I got some minutes left of the show, how can people reach out to you? How can people connect with you to maybe help your, what you got going on and everything, and really just look for resources to how in the world do we combat this, even if we don't combat it or cannot combat it for everybody, just for our own individual homes. How do we start with us, but also how do we connect with you?
Okay, so I am on Instagram at Psych Talk, PSYCH TALK DRB, and I'll get it to you, and hopefully you can get it out to people too. And then I started receiving a bunch of messages that I was on TikTok, that my video was I was not on TikTok, but my video was all over TikTok and has millions and millions of views now, which is wonderful. So I'm now on TikTok. I did not want to learn another social media platform because I'm old and don't want to do that. But I'm on TikTok at Dr. Bevans, DRBEVANS. And so people can message me there. I am doing a bunch of little videos now about artificial colors and questions that I get from people, and I'm trying to put them in video form to answer so that people have more resources. Right. I also have, I'm trying to think what I have a Living Die Free on Facebook, but it's kids. I think it's Kids Living Die Free on Facebook. But Instagram is probably one of the easier ways. Or I have my email at my work that I can give people, rebecca.bevans@wnc.edu. People feel free to email me. I'm available to answer questions. I do this because it's a passion now. I never ever expected to be an expert in this area. I never wanted to. 20 years ago, if you would have told me I was going to be an expert in artificial food dyes and what they do to some people, I would have laughed at you.
And the reason behind it.
Yeah, but there's a reason behind it. And I want to take what we learned. I'm an educator. I want to take what we learned and I want to share it with everyone. So again, that people don't have to suffer. And I am happy to talk to as many people as I can, as quickly as I can in order to help. And so I can get you the links and maybe you can put them with the video or whatever, but I'm happy. And then I have my TED Talk. If you just Googled Rebecca Bevans TEDx, that pops up, and that's our story. And I actually have a book that we're putting together. It's kind of like a workbook, a how-to kind of book, and it has our story in it. Just again, another way to reach somebody. So there's, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Listen, even if you, it's funny because even if you're not familiar, I'm not familiar with TikTok, but even if you're not familiar with TikTok, the content and the passion that you're putting out there it's going to get carried because people are carrying it for you. I mean, it's evident.
I'm so grateful there for everyone who took my TED Talk and broke it into pieces and threw it up all over and all the comments. And I'm so grateful because the whole point of doing that TED Talk was if I could reach one kid and help one kid, then it was all worth it. And here we are thousands later. And I am so grateful for everyone who shares our story. I'm so grateful for you for letting me be on here and to talk about this and help educate. We don't know. I didn't know. I got a degree. I have a PhD and I didn't know food dyes cause a problem. And if I'm heavily educated in an area that you would think covered some of that, what about people who aren't? And that's no fault of anyone's. We trust that what's in our foods is safe, and for some it's just not.
It's not.
For some it is, but for some it's not. Hey, I can't eat gluten. We have celiac in my family. My son can eat gluten, so it's not safe for me. It's safe for him, but we have it labeled, right? We have it labeled. We know we have that education. We don't have the education for the artificial food dyes, and more people need to know. So you're an angel. Thank you for helping to spread that message.
My pleasure. Listen, it is a pleasure having you here. We just have to be mindful of what we eat. And I mean, it's like, oh, I can't do what? Yeah. So, Dr. Rebecca Bevans, thank you so much. When I reached out to you and you reached back, I was like, yes, because it's so needed. I'm from the inner city. I know how people struggle. I know the resources that they have. I know the resources that they don't have. I know it's tough, and I mean, I know. So I appreciate you coming on to the show. Thank you so much, and we love to reach back out to you again and just kind of continue to talk and stuff, and just see how the research is going, see how you're doing, and if if funds need to be raised, I don't know if you've got set up for that, but let's because it's about. It's not about our next generation. It's about our now generation.
Yeah, it is. It's about our kids.
Yeah, sure. So, well, Dr. Bevans, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate having you. This has been Street Therapy with Chris Jackson. Mr. Walker, as always, thank you, sir. Appreciate you, man. And we'll see you later. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. Bye.